I felt his warmth even before I opened my eyes. His arm rested on my chest, his face close to my neck, his calm breathing sending shivers down my spine. That's how I woke up that morning, with Marcus Sullivan sleeping next to me like he'd always belonged there. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like to get access to more stories like this. My name is Christopher Reynolds, I'm 32, and 8 months ago I left Boston behind, along with a 5-year relationship and all the certainties I thought I had. I chose Puget Sound, at the far north of Seattle, to start over. A place where the smell of the sea perfectly replaces the scent of painful memories. Fishing gave me purpose. I wake up before sunrise, when the world belongs only to the seagulls and the fishermen. I brew a strong coffee while watching the horizon light up, with shades of orange and red announcing another day at sea. My boat, modest but reliable, has become my refuge. The waves don't ask questions, and the sea doesn't demand explanations. In the afternoon, I sell my catch at the local market, and at night I hide in a corner of the only bar around, where cold beer and silence keep me company. That went on for months, until that storm hit. The sky darkened in minutes, turning an ordinary day into chaos. Violent waves shook our boat like it was a toy. The engine failed, making a metallic noise before falling into silence. The kind of silence that screams danger. We were adrift when another boat answered our call for help. That's when I saw Marcus for the first time. At the helm of his boat with the confidence of someone born at sea, he came close enough to toss over some lines and secure us. "I'll tow you to the harbor," he shouted over the howl of the wind. His voice carried authority and something else, something I couldn't quite place at the time. While we waited for the tide to be right to head back, Marcus offered me coffee from his thermos. Our fingers brushed briefly, a contact that lasted less than a second, but sent an electric shock through my body that I hadn't felt in years. I watched his calloused hands holding the cup, his stubble framing a restrained smile, and eyes that seemed to see right through my carefully constructed facade. "First storm?" he asked, breaking the silence. "The first this violent," I replied, trying to sound more experienced than I really was. "You're not from around here." It wasn't a question. "Boston," I admitted. "I moved out west a few months ago." "Running away or looking for something?" His direct question caught me off guard. "Is there any difference?" I shot back, surprised by my own honesty. Marcus smiled, his smile reaching his eyes. "I guess not, in the end." In the following days, Marcus showed up at the harbor offering to help fix my engine. We worked side by side for hours, exchanging only a few words, yet establishing a natural rhythm between us. His hands worked with precision, knowing every part of the engine as if it were part of his own body. "Dinner at my place tonight," he said at the end of the 3rd day, "as a thank you for the help." I hesitated. Closeness wasn't in my plans. "No need to thank me." "It's not gratitude," he replied simply. "It's an invitation." Marcus's house was like him, solid, unpretentious, and welcoming in an unexpectedly warm way. We talked about the sea and fishing techniques, and, fueled by wine, we ventured into more personal territory. 2 years ago, I thought I had found the right person, he confessed, looking at his hands. I found out in the worst way that I was wrong. I recognized in him the same kind of scar I carried. Boston has the same story, only more recent, I admitted. For the first time in months, I laughed genuinely. Marcus had a way of telling stories that made the world seem less threatening. When the night ended, there was that moment, you know, the one, when no one wants to be the first to say goodbye. We stared at each other a few extra seconds than usual between friends. I felt something awaken inside me, something I had buried along with my memories of Boston. Then his ex-partner showed up in town. I saw them talking at the market, their body language revealing a past intimacy. Marcus looked uncomfortable. I felt foolish. Clearly, complications were present, as they always are. I decided to step back, return to my safe, solitary routine. But at night, alone in the cabin, I discovered that the protective walls I'd built weren't as effective anymore against thoughts of green eyes and calloused hands. Rain started falling when I saw Marcus walking toward my cabin. It was almost 2 in the morning. Through the foggy window, I watched his silhouette approach, shoulders hunched and steps determined despite the storm. I wasn't expecting visitors, least of all him. Not after seeing him with his ex that afternoon. There were 3 firm knocks at the door. I hesitated for a moment, considering pretending to be asleep, but something in the urgency of those knocks made me get up. "I'm soaked," he said when I opened the door, water dripping from his dark hair, making his shirt cling to his body. There wasn't a smile on his face, just an intensity in his gaze that completely disarmed me. "Come in," I replied, stepping aside. "What happened?" Marcus walked past me, carrying the smell of rain, salt, and something unmistakably his own. I couldn't think of anywhere else to go. His voice sounded different, rougher, more vulnerable. I grabbed a towel from the small bathroom cabinet and some dry clothes that would fit him. "You're shaking," I observed while handing them over. "There's some whiskey on the shelf. Pour us a drink while you change." I lit the small, improvised fireplace I'd built at the back of the cabin. It wasn't much, just a few stones arranged with limited skill, but it produced enough heat on the chilly nights of Puget Sound. While Marcus changed, I poured 2 generous shots of whiskey into the only decent glasses I had. When he returned, wearing my clothes that were a little short for his longer arms, something shifted in the cabin's atmosphere. My clothes on him created an unplanned intimacy, as if we were sharing more than just fabric. "Your ex?" I asked bluntly, offering him the glass. Marcus took the drink, his fingers brushing against mine for a moment that lasted longer than it should have. "David showed up to settle scores," he replied, sarcasm clear in his voice. "Apparently 2 years weren't enough for him to figure out that it's over." We sat close to the fireplace, the warmth of the flames creating dancing shadows on the wooden walls. The orange light softened Marcus's sharp features, highlighting the defined line of his jaw and the small scar near his right eyebrow. "You know what's ironic?" he continued, staring into the flames. "He said he missed me when he heard I was moving on." His eyes met mine, as if I'd been waiting all this time for him. The whiskey warmed my throat, though nothing warmed it as much as Marcus's gaze. "And did you wait?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. "No," he replied without hesitation. "I thought I'd never be interested in someone like that again. Until I saw you on that boat, fighting the sea, like you had something to prove." His arm brushed against mine as he shifted position, and this time his fingers lingered, a light yet deliberate touch. I felt every inch of my skin respond to that contact. "I've been thinking about this since I first saw you," he confessed, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. "About how it would be." The smell of burning wood mixed with the natural saltiness of his skin, creating an almost intoxicating atmosphere. Our breaths gradually synchronized. The silence between us was no longer empty, it was filled with possibilities. "I've been avoiding this," I finally admitted, meeting his gaze. "Avoiding admitting what I feel when I'm near you." Marcus moved closer slowly, giving me time to pull away. I didn't. The distance between us vanished until I could feel his breath on my lips, a silent question hanging in the air. I responded by leaning in, closing the gap completely. The first kiss was hesitant, testing limits and exploring uncharted territory. We pulled apart for a second, exchanging looks of confirmation before his lips returned to mine with more urgency. The second kiss released months of pent-up tension, like a wave crashing against rocks after a long journey. His hands found my face, rough fingers contrasting with the softness of his touch. I tasted whiskey and salt on his mouth and felt the texture of his beard against my skin. I pulled him closer, surprising us both with my urgency. His body responded to mine, fitting perfectly together like 2 pieces of a jigsaw puzzle that were always meant to be together. The darkness in the cabin turned every touch into a blind discovery. His hands slid down my neck, exploring the uncharted territory of my back and tracing every muscle tensed from working at sea. My hands found the hem of the shirt I'd lent him, seeking the warmth of skin beneath the fabric. "May I?" I murmured, against his lips. He simply lifted his arms, letting me remove the shirt. The sight of his bare torso under the flickering firelight made my heart race. Every scar, Every mark on his skin told stories of years at sea, a life lived intensely. I traced them with my fingers, memorizing his personal terrain. Our clothes found their way to the cabin floor with an ease that belied the time it had taken us to reach this moment. His eyes roamed over my exposed body with an almost reverent admiration. "You're more handsome than I imagined," he confessed, his voice deeper than usual. "You really thought that?" I asked, a small smile creeping in. "More times than I'd like to admit," he replied, pulling me in for another kiss that sent waves of heat through my body. We moved toward the narrow bed in the corner of the cabin, our limbs entangling in a clumsy dance as our hands refused to let go. When my body hit the mattress and Marcus's weight pressed me down, I felt as if I had finally returned to a place I never knew existed. His body was like the sea I sailed every day, familiar yet mysterious. Every touch, every movement was a discovery. Marcus explored my skin with the same care and precision he used to command his boat, attentive to every reaction, every sigh. "May I touch you here?" he asked, his lips trailing along my body and moving lower and lower. "Yes," I replied, letting go of the control I had clung to for so long. When his lips met my most sensitive spot, I arched my back without thinking. His hands gripped my hips firmly, anchoring me as his mouth took me to depths I'd never explored before. "Marcus." I whispered his name like a prayer, my fingers tangled in his hair still damp from the rain. He looked up to meet my eyes, a silent question shining there. I nodded, unable to form coherent words. Marcus reached for the drawer beside the bed and retrieved what we needed. "Are you sure?" he asked, his body hovering above mine, eyes searching for any sign of hesitation. "I've never been more sure," I replied, pulling him down for another kiss. Marcus took his time with careful, patient attention, watching every expression on my face, every reaction of my body. When our bodies finally came together, the sensation was overwhelming. He moved inside me with a rhythm that felt rehearsed over years, as if our bodies had always known they'd meet like this. "Are you okay?" he asked, slowing his movements, as his eyes stayed fixed on mine. "I'm great," I replied, my hands gripping his broad shoulders. "Don't stop." Our movements quickened like a storm forming rapidly on the horizon. The heat between us contrasted with the chill sneaking in through the window cracks. Marcus found that sensitive spot inside me, and it felt as if every star in the night sky exploded all at once. Words gave way to raw, instinctive sounds echoing off the wooden walls. I felt my whole body tense, on the edge of a delicious precipice. Marcus sensed the change perfectly, intensifying his movements at just the right rhythm. "Christopher," he moaned my name as we climaxed together, our bodies trembling in perfect unison, like two ships arriving at a safe harbor simultaneously after a long, turbulent journey. We lay side by side, staring at the wooden ceiling as our breathing slowly returned to normal. The silence that enveloped us now was different, comfortable, intimate, and filled with something new and precious. "That was," I began, struggling to find the right words. "Yes, it was," Marcus agreed, his voice carrying a smile. I turned to look at him, watching how the dying firelight cast soft shadows on his face. The dynamic between us had changed forever. We were no longer just two men working at the same harbor, but two souls who had let down their guards completely. Marcus traced lazy circles on my chest with his fingertips, sending delightful shivers through me. "I've never felt such an immediate, deep connection with anyone," he confessed, his voice low and intimate in the quiet of the cabin. "I was so scared of that," I admitted, surprising even myself with the honesty. "Of feeling anything new. That's why I went so far away. And here I was thinking you were just in love with the Pacific," he joked, his hand finding mine on the sheet. "Isn't it ironic? I came here to avoid feeling anything, and I ended up finding someone who makes me feel it all at once." Marcus propped himself on his elbow and looked straight at me. The vulnerability in his eyes was something new. "After David, I convinced myself I was better off alone. Until you showed up on my radar, literally." "Storm radar," I corrected, with a smile. not very romantic. I disagree. There's something deeply romantic about finding someone in the midst of chaos, as if the universe was shouting, "Pay attention, this is important." I laughed softly, recognizing the truth in his words. There was something almost fated about the way we met, as if the storm was just a clever excuse from the universe to put us in the same boat. "What happens now?" I asked, a hint of insecurity creeping in. Marcus interlaced his fingers with mine, bringing our joined hands to his lips for a gentle kiss. "Now we sleep, tomorrow we fish, and in the coming days, we'll figure it out together, no rush." The simplicity of his answer brought a calm I hadn't felt in a long time. I snuggled against his body, fitting perfectly into curves that seemed made just for me. His arm wrapped around my waist and pulled me in even closer. "Good night, Christopher," he murmured against my hair. "Good night, Marcus," I replied, closing my eyes. For the first time since leaving Boston, I didn't dream of the past. Instead, I dreamed of boats sailing side by side on calm waters, under a sky full of possibilities. The sun was already seeping through the thin curtains when I woke up. For a moment, I was disoriented. The weight of Marcus's arm on my chest, his warmth against my back, that feeling of completeness I hadn't experienced in ages. I didn't move, scared to break the magic of that moment. I closed my eyes again, storing that feeling in my memory like jotting down the coordinates of a treasure found at sea. The sound of knocks at the door broke the morning quiet. Marcus shifted beside me, his breathing changing as he woke up. The knocking grew more insistent. "Who would that be at this hour?" I murmured, tension rising inside me. In our small fishing community, secrets never last long. Marcus got up in one smooth motion, wrapping a sheet around his waist. "Let me see," he said, his voice still hoarse with sleep. Through the bedroom window, I saw him open the door. My stomach sank when I recognized the visitor, David, Marcus's ex, standing on my porch. Even from a distance, I could see surprise, then understanding spread across his face when he noticed Marcus wearing nothing but a sheet. His eyes scanned the cabin, probably looking for me. The two of them moved a few steps apart and talked intensely. I couldn't catch a word, only noticing the tense body language. Marcus gestured with one hand while the other clutched the sheet tightly. David alternated between talking and nodding, his posture becoming more defeated as the conversation went on. A bitter feeling rose in my throat. Was that it then? The universe teasing me with a taste of happiness only to snatch it away again? I began gathering Marcus's clothes scattered across the cabin floor, folding them neatly at the edge of the bed. I braced myself for yet another disappointment, rebuilding the walls that had crumbled the night before. Through the window, I saw David touch Marcus's arm, a gesture that looked like a plea. Marcus stepped back, shaking his head firmly. After a few moments, David turned and left, shoulders slumped as he walked toward the center of town. Marcus stayed still, watching him go before coming back inside the cabin. When he entered the room, his face was calm. He noticed the folded clothes on the bed and raised an eyebrow as he looked at me. "Are you kicking me out already?" he asked with a half smile. "I thought you'd be leaving," I replied honestly. "With him." Marcus sat down beside me, his hand joining mine on the mattress. "He came to ask me to go back to Boston with him." My heart skipped a beat. "And what did you say?" I told him our past was over for good, that I had finally found someone who makes me want to stay exactly where I am. His eyes searched mine, intense and sincere. "I chose to stay, Christopher, if you want me." The vulnerability in a man so usually confident made something inside me collapse. Not walls this time, but the lingering doubts. I reached out and pulled him back onto the bed, onto this new path we were just starting to explore together. "I'm sure the crew can survive a day without us," I murmured against his lips. In the following weeks, our routines slowly fell into place like two tides, learning to flow together. Marcus kept his own boat and crew, but often we met at sea, exchanging signals only we understood. At night, we alternated between my cabin and his house, exploring each other's spaces and filling them with new memories. The small fishing community noticed the change, of course. The upside of small towns is that you don't need big announcements. The downside is that every move is watched. In the beginning, curious glances in the market and hushed conversations in the local bar greeted us. Some of the older fishermen showed initial discomfort, But when two fishing boats work side by side every day and yield good results, people tend to focus on what really matters. On a particularly pleasant Sunday afternoon, we walked along the small, rocky beach of Puget Sound. The late afternoon sun painted the sky in shades of amber and violet, creating a display that even the best postcards couldn't capture. "I never really liked those orange tones in Boston," I commented, watching the colors reflect in the calm water. "They always meant the day was ending and I had to go back to an empty apartment." Marcus interlaced his fingers with mine, a gesture that now felt as natural as breathing. "And now? Now they mean we get another night together. It changes everything, doesn't it? The same view, completely different meanings." Marcus smiled, the kind of smile that still made my heart race. "You know what I sometimes think? That storm was the best thing that could have happened. If my boat hadn't answered your call, another would have," I finished. "Exactly. And you'd be walking with old Peterson on this beach instead," he joked, referring to the grumpy 70-year-old captain who rarely talked to anyone. We laughed together, our laughter mingling with the soft sound of waves crashing against the rocks. We sat on a large log washed ashore by the tide, watching the horizon as the sun began its final descent to the other side of the world. "It's funny how life works," I reflected, tossing a stone into the water and watching the ripples expand. I came here thinking I was running away, when really I was just getting closer to what truly matters. I had to cross the entire country to find what I didn't even know I was looking for. Marcus rested his chin on my shoulder, his beard lightly brushing my skin. "Do you believe in fate, Christopher?" "I didn't used to," I admitted. "But how else do you explain that out of all the places to start over, I chose the one where you'd be waiting for a storm to introduce us?" "Pretty poetic for a fisherman," he teased. "Must be your influence," I replied, turning to kiss him softly. When we pulled away, I noticed a thoughtful expression on his face. "What is it?" I asked. "I've been thinking. My house has enough space for 2 people. Your cabin is charming, but in the winter, those drafts become a problem." My heart skipped a beat. "Are you inviting me to live with you?" "I'm suggesting you consider the practicality," he replied, feigning seriousness before a smile broke through. "Yes, Christopher. I'm asking you to come live with me. We've already spent half our time together. It just makes sense." Feigning deep consideration, I looked up at the sky as if seeking answers in the clouds. "Well, your kitchen is definitely better than mine. And my bed doesn't make that annoying noise every time we move. And you've got reliably hot water. Is that a yes?" he asked, vulnerability returning to his voice. I turned to face him fully, cupping his face in my hands. "It's an absolute yes." Sometimes, when I look back, I'm still amazed at how small, seemingly accidental moments can completely change our lives. An engine failure during a storm, a shared cup of coffee while waiting for the tide to turn, an unexpected late-night visit in the rain. Maybe the most significant part of that first night wasn't the physical intimacy we shared, though it was transformative, but the next morning, when Marcus chose to stay. When, faced with going back to the familiar, he opted for the unknown. We were building together. Today, as we pack up my few possessions for the move, I found the old mug in which Marcus served me coffee on that first day. I kept it with special care, like a talisman representing our beginning. Because love rarely starts with grand declarations or dramatic gestures. It usually begins with small actions, almost insignificant to an outside observer, yet containing an entire universe of possibilities for those involved. In the end, what we learn together is that there isn't one single moment that defines a relationship. It's a constellation of moments, interconnected, and each lighting the way to the next. Courage isn't just in the grand gestures, but in the daily willingness to stay vulnerable, to keep choosing someone, even when we know their imperfections. Now when we head out to sea together, our boats sail in perfect sync. We need no fancy communication system. Years at sea taught us to read the waters, and months together taught us to read each other. That's how I know I've found my safe harbor. Not because the storm is over, but because I finally found someone worth weathering them with. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like to get access to more stories like this. If you've ever felt that instant connection with someone, that silent recognition that something important is happening, then you know what I mean. And if you haven't yet, keep sailing. The sea is vast, but the encounters that truly count have a curious habit of happening just when you stop looking for them.